when I started at Netflix because I was in search, and I just looked at all of these companies running recruiting so poorly, making terrible decisions on hires because they were afraid they're going to lose the budget, so they're just going to hire anybody. What would happen if we just told the truth?
Welcome to TruthWorks, where we dig into the nitty-gritty of leadership and work.
And what needs to change. I'm Jessica Neal.
And I'm Patty McCord.
Our journey together started in HR, but trust us, it's evolved into something wild, honest, and well, a bit rebellious.
So throw out the handbook. We're here to redefine rules to work for us, not against us.
Let's dive into another episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of TruthWorks. I am so excited about today. I would like the whole past couple days. I've just been like, okay, I get to have two of my buddies on the show. We just realized like the three of us actually haven't ever sat down and have a conversation together, but yet we all know each other and we all know each other pretty well. I don't even know how long ago I met the two of you. But it was, I don't know, must be over plus 10 years ago. And so today I have two of my friends. Thank you, by the way, for coming on the show. I have Peter Clarke and I have Jeff Markowitz, and they're going to tell you a little bit about their experience. But together, the three of us started out, well, actually, Pete, you started out not in executive search, but we all were in search. And around the same time, I ended up going to Netflix. You ended up, Peter, at Accel. Jeff, you ended up at Greylock. That's when our worlds kind of collided at some point. And we've just seen a lot in the Valley and a lot about hiring. And we've been around the block a few times, the three of us. And we've had really interesting careers, and we've been able to impact some of the most significant companies that have ever been created. So I want to have all my listeners know all the things that you two know. So I'm so excited to have you. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Excited to be here.
Yeah. And Pete has been on the show before, but not really as a guest. He was questioning me. And so now we're going to do a reverse of that. And I'm going to be questioning him. So Peter, we're going to start with you. Tell us a little bit about your career. You're obviously at Accel now. Tell people where you started and what you've been doing for the last, I don't know, you've been there over a decade. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, at Accel, coming up on 13 years.
Yeah.
So, I guess have made myself irrelevant anywhere else at this point. But
wow, that's not true.
To your point, I started not in exec search. I don't know that many people actually do start right into it. And first time around, I'll try to make it short, but yeah, I started my career in commercial graphic design, was a designer. I guess my joke is that I got out of that because I felt like it was a job that everybody thinks they can do, so nobody respects it, nobody wants to pay for it. So then I went back to school, got a degree in computer science, became a software engineer. Maybe you could question my decision making. Yeah. So I went to Boeing.
Yeah.
My timing's not great. If I can give anyone advice, I have a freshly minted CS degree in 2004, which wasn't the best time to be an engineer. Ended up at Boeing, and that was great. Iconic company, but I was doing software engineering at a place that actually didn't care that much about software engineering because they built airplanes. And
right.
I had a rotational program, which made it seem a little less sort of bureaucratic. But ultimately, there's these sort of parallel threads to where then my brother-in-law actually got me into the search business, and then that's where I first started working with Jeff. At a little boutique firm.
You guys were at the same firm, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
What was it called?
Went there, and Howard Fisher Associates.
Oh yeah, Howard
still
Fisher.
Around. Yeah. Nod to Howard. So, but that's where I first started. I mean, I was green, new to the search business. Other than I like to say, I managed to work myself back into a job that everybody thinks they can do, so nobody respects it, and nobody wants to pay for it. So, full circle, and here we are. But a couple years at Howard Fisher, then series of events we'd left. Then Jeff and I ended up at Heidrick, so I followed Jeff over there. And then Jeff went off to Greylock, but I'll let him tell that story. And then I followed him there. And then I'm a follower. That's all.
You're a follower of Jeff.
Yeah. And then ended up at Accel. And I had the opportunity to work with the Accel crew doing searches, both at Howard Fisher and Heidrick. And I would be remiss to say that in between Heidrick and Greylock, I did. I'm the fifth Beatle of True Search in that, I helped them get that. There was 5 of us that started True. Of course, I also am very quick to point out that there were 5 of us when we started it, and there were 5 when I left. So full credit to Brad, Joe, Josh, and Tim for building a massive search firm. I did nothing. Came and went, but in between there, and then went to Greylock, worked with Jeff for about a year, and then had the chance to come to Accel.
Yeah, and you've been there for 13 years. That's
coming up on that.
So tell people, remind people what Accel is, because maybe not everybody knows. We have listeners all over the world. So tell everybody what Accel does, and then maybe some of the more infamous companies you guys have been a part of over the years.
Got it. Yeah. So Accel is a venture capital firm that's been around now 45 years. Longer than that. So we pretty much have done the early stage investing in Silicon Valley companies, notable companies. That's sort of the bread and butter. Our early stage team still does what they do. We do, very early investments, seed, Series A. I think that's something that generally we're not often given credit for, but our goal is to be first money in. From an institutional perspective, which these days means you're getting in way earlier than you ever did in the past. And then, over time, we've added on some additional vehicles. So we have a growth fund that's still ideally focused on first money in, but that tends to be more bootstrapped, founder-led businesses, where we can come in and have an impact. They're generally further along than the say a few founders and a couple engineers type of seed stage investment, but generally also still need a lot of support and help around how they go and build a business. And then we have a third fund that I would say is really targeted at being able to follow on invest in the things that are working. So that gives us the ability to, if we've done something early stage and it's gone really well, obviously we love to keep doubling down on good investments. And so that gives us the ability to do those types of investments coupled with it's given us flexibility to do some kind of later stage things, New Relic, Qualtrics, some of those types of investments where they've been taken private, and we partner with some of the larger PE firms on that too. So 99% enterprise technology, I would say. We do have a handful of consumer companies, but a lot of it is generally business software, and then of course AI, and where are the applications? Yeah, AI. It's relatively small fund or firm people wise, and then my role here is running talent, which I say I've doubled the team at Accel on the talent side in 12 or 13 years now. So there's 2 of us here. We're probably one of the smaller venture talent teams, but I will, I learned that from Jeff as well. Keep it small. Don't paint too big a target.
Yeah.
Figure out where you can add value. But so we kind of manage all things talent. That is primarily portfolio focused. It's all external.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not us thinking about building, the Accel team. We don't spend much time from a talent team perspective on that. And then ideally all of the time is spent working with the portfolio.
Yeah. And helping to grow these companies that you're investing
Yeah.
in. It's
Oh,
a
and
big
the
job.
companies of note.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some iconic ones, of course, that you can Dropbox and Spotify and Facebook, that you can point to, CrowdStrike. I mean, I love 1Password, Qualtrics, a range, newer ones like Gamma and Decagon, of course, Cursor, Lovable,
Yeah.
N8N. So, and then, there's some ones I really like that no one's ever heard of. But, some of the newer deals.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a fun range,
Yeah.
companies at all different stages.
Yeah. Which, now I'm in VC and,
Yeah.
now we have that in common. But I really like the diversity and the breadth because
Yeah.
you're just talking to all these different businesses that are solving really different issues in the world,
Yeah.
right? And so I find that to be fascinating. So
Well, and you're on the board of one of my favorites. So,
I know Public.
but just less
Yeah.
known. But yeah, Public.
Yeah, it's less
Great
known, but
founders.
they're great and they're great founders.
Yeah.
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 Okay, Jeff, now we're going to do you. So, Pete kind of described your career and his following of you.
Sorry.
But take us back to the early days. Like, what were you doing? And tell us about, how that led you back to where you are now.
So I was at actually Deloitte coming out of college. I spent, 5 years there. I was a CPA and, knew I was not, it wasn't my calling. And actually got to know, Howard Fisher, and, went to Howard Fisher in Philadelphia, which is where we were. And, literally 10 months after I started at Howard Fisher, they needed somebody to open up Silicon Valley in the 99, first bubble.
Yeah.
We raised, Allison and I, my wife, we raised our hands and said, well, let's go. So we didn't know the business at all, but we went. And it was rough. I think I got yelled at multiple times a week by, some of my friends today in venture capital that just essentially train me by, throwing my feet to the fire, and making tons of mistakes. And then, we moved back to Philadelphia after about 6 years and was doing it, coast to coast. It was hard. And then
Right.
Greylock came and asked me to come succeed the person that they had who was retiring. And then we moved back to the West Coast and did it.
And what year was that?
2011.
11. Okay. And
Yep.
that must have been around when I met you.
Right around then.
Yeah.
I remember where we were when we met in the conference room A of Greylock. Yeah.
You do? I remember, but I didn't remember. I didn't remember the A.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I remember being nervous.
That was inside
I was
baseball,
nervous
the
to
conference
meet
room
you.
names.
I was nervous to meet you.
Yeah. Why?
I don't know. I don't know. It's
It was
just
the
like
setting.
a young kid
the
at
setting.
Netflix,
Yeah.
like.
Little did you know, I had no idea what I was doing, but faked it well.
Well, you played it off really well. So
Thank you.
yeah.
I stayed at Greylock for a while, and Google. I met somebody from Google. They asked me to come meet Sundar. I was fine doing that. I didn't know what the intent was, but I quickly found out what the intent was. And Sundar he basically, the first meeting, he said, can you tell me what you do at Greylock? And I sort of mapped it out. And he said, well, would you come consider doing that for me?
Well, yeah. Would you tell him? Like map it.
It's
I want to know.
I mean, it's basically, I have the diagram. We had
okay,
portfolio.
I just want to pause because, by the way, okay, you're downplaying things a lot. So this is like one of the biggest companies in the world, and the CEO is calling you
Well,
and
he
wanting
didn't.
to meet. Well, yeah, but he did. He wanted to meet you,
Yeah.
and like that's a big deal. Did you think it was a big deal at the time, or you were like, whatever?
Nah, I mean, I told my partners, I said at Greylock, I said I was meeting him, and was there anything that they thought would be beneficial for me to cover with respect to Greylock? I mean, I really didn't know what the purpose of the meeting was other than a general introduction.
Right.
Um,
And so you map it
and
out for him what you do. What do you say to
yeah, it
him?
was simple. It's like we have portfolio companies and we have the firm, and then we meet people all the time, and they could benefit portfolio companies or they could benefit the firm. And you just leverage every single conversation that you have with people to somehow benefit either the portfolio company or the firm or the person that you're talking to, that you can benefit. It was just a thing that you maximize every discussion you have. You understand who your stakeholders are, and you figure out how to, extract value for each person or for each group. That's long story short. But he liked it. And he said, well, I could see doing that for my team, for him, for Sundar,
Yeah.
and for, the broader Google. And, long story short, they asked me to come. I actually didn't go at the time. I just didn't feel I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
I just
he told him to call me instead to see what happened. So
I
I'm just
probably
gonna throw
did,
that out
didn't
there.
I?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. And did he?
Yeah, they called me. So
Yeah.
they said,
Yeah.
Jeff told us to call you, and then,
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just loved Greylock, in all honesty, so much. I loved the
You did.
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just didn't want to leave.
Yeah.
A year went by actually, and then it came up again. And it got me at a moment in time where it was like, I've only worked with venture-backed companies. I've like never seen what a large company is like. So why not? And I did it, and that was that. And I did it for 6 years. And now, fortunately, Greylock was willing to bring me back as an advisor. I mean, it's a very light advisor, to be honest.
You have a lot of time for golf.
A lot of time for a lot of time for golf. So I'm available when they need me, but they don't really need me that much. But I love the firm, so happy to help in any way.
Yeah, and I know they love you. Okay, so you go and take this role at Google, and you're not part of like the regular recruiting team. Like from what I understand from you, like you reported into Sundar, right? Like you had your own kind of thing going on.
Yeah, it's it's a very big company. I think some of the the eye-opening things are you have this sense of like, what is it like to be in a big company? And then you're just like, oh my God, it's so big that like, that it's hard to understand it and know it before you get in. So,
yeah,
Sundar had a team.
You have to be in it and see it and feel it. And yeah.
Yeah. He had a team of people that, supports him. I was the person that did that on the, the talent side, not the HR side, because he had somebody that did it on the HR side, but on the talent side. And essentially, for 6 years, I was just on call for things that hit his orbit around senior leadership.
Yeah.
So,
and what would he turn to you for? Was it more like, can you help me diagnose whether this person's going to be successful here or not? Was it more that, or what kind of role were you playing?
There was some of that. I mean, to be honest, I think it takes a fair amount of time to, gain his trust.
Sure.
Which is understandable.
Yeah.
But it's like rethinking how the board makeup, because it was an aging board, and you have to get new board members in. when Ruth Porat wanted to take on a new role, it was like, how do we map out bringing in the right CFO for Alphabet?
Right.
Same thing on HR. HR never reported to the CEO of the company. Always reported into the CFO.
Yeah.
So, I had to talk him
That was
through.
bringing Fiona in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But talking him through like that and the fact that you're never going to get a really good person not reporting to you. I mean, that was during COVID too.
Yeah, I remember.
So that was kind of brutal. But it was, what I quickly found out is, Google has this massive recruiting machine. That recruiting machine, didn't love when I would get involved with anything other than stuff for Sundar. And they actually wanted to do the stuff for Sundar because obviously it was the highest level for company.
Yeah.
So it was just a very, sort of political kind of thing where I found myself.
Yeah.
Which was
great. Kind of a hard place to be. But fascinating.
Fascinating. I would choose venture every day of the week, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think, the three of us, we've just seen so much, especially around hiring. So I want to talk about that a little bit because, I'm passionate about it, but two, I think, and this really fueled me when I started at Netflix because I was in search and, I just looked at all of these companies running recruiting so poorly, making terrible decisions on hires because they were afraid they're going to lose the budget, so they're just going to hire anybody. They would lose a great person because they had to do the process of them meeting 20 people versus being a little faster and quicker, or they'd lose people over a couple $1,000s because of the budget or whatever. But I saw this over and over again, and then I sort of had this. I don't know. Wouldn't call it a mission per se, but like I just was like, I kind of want to solve this, and that's when I met Netflix, and they were like, we want to do this differently than anyone, and they were a client of mine, and they were like, we think you can do it differently, right? And we don't want you to build an internal recruiting team. We want you to build like an internal search firm, right? That is boutique, that puts talent first. We will do anything to find the right people. And, at first, similar to you two, I'm sure I'm like, no, I'm good. As many things as we get put on our, offers put on our plate. But then, they kept coming back and I, obviously I ended up doing it, but I ended up doing it because they had this desire to do it differently. They understood that talent was the most important thing that mattered. They just didn't know how to get it. And, so I want to talk about why is it, and I don't know, that was in 2006 and now we're in 2026 and the same things that were messed up then are messed up now. Like companies are.
No, it's fixed now. It's all fixed.
It is.
Yeah, everything works great.
Yeah, it all works great. So why is hiring so hard, guys? Why is it? What do you think?
Why is it so hard? I don't.
Or why do most get it wrong? How about that? What are they doing?
I think a lot of people, look at it from like they actually, they don't diligence, they don't assess, they just like try to recruit.
Yeah.
And, I always found that and saw that more from the venture side where there was such a competition to get people and to get the right people that they almost, you almost forget that you have to assess and evaluate as well. So you spend all of this time trying to get people in and then you're like, well, where was the diligence side?
Right.
I mean, we always, and I know Pete does the same, like we always caught that, but I think a lot of companies don't. And they just do everything they can to get people in what they believe are the right people in, and they forget how important the assessment side of it is, the referencing side of it is. Like all that stuff is critically important.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you get it wrong,
Yeah.
it's terrible for the bottom line, especially, as you go higher up in the organization, right? From a bad CEO to a bad CFO. I mean, there's years lost sometimes. And lots of dollars and, revenue.
We talked about it just before we got on. Like even if you use, the big period of like DEI hiring, and I mean, I saw it, at Google a lot, where there was just, you had to get certain numbers of people. I mean, that's kind of what I was seeing across the organization that were DEI hires, and it just didn't happen at Google. It happened a lot of different companies.
Yep.
And you were risking putting people that weren't qualified for roles into roles, and because they were a DEI hire, and I'm not saying anything negative about DEI hiring, but it was just the process itself put people potentially in bad situations where it just didn't work out. And that wasn't the person's fault.
Right.
They just weren't ready for it.
Right. Yeah. Again, the attention behind it, I think, was good. Right.
Yeah.
But then the process or policy that folks put around it was flawed. Right?
It led to mistakes.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, you kind of lost sight of the point, right?
Yeah.
And for the process.
Right. Well, why do you think it's so challenging, Pete? Like, what do you think?
Well, and I'll use just the early stage building lens, but I mean, I don't know, variety of things. I think we generally just operated extremes anyways, because to Jeff's point, I think a lot of what was happening in certain cycles was, move as quickly as you can, and you short circuit process, and you just try to get the war for, I mean, probably one of the biggest things is we call it a war for talent, right? Which puts people in a different mindset, right? And, it's not really an all or nothing thing, but we tend to be very win-lose in terms of, from a company perspective, right? Like, I must win the war. It's sort of like, well, now the war became the thing, right? Not just let's get a great person on board. But like we've seen a pretty extreme swing into over referencing, right? And then a lack of decision velocity because there's a fear of hiring. And one thing, I mean, I will tell this to anybody who will listen, my little mantra is like, everyone's heard that a bad hire is the most expensive decision you can make. And I say that's incorrect, because you can make a lot more expensive bad decisions, but it's definitely the most expensive bad decision you can keep, right? If you don't act on it. So when you know it's not working, do something about it, because ultimately if you make a decision, you go with the information you have, you get somebody on board, and it's for whatever reason just not working out. Usually if you did the work, there's just something else. It's a fit thing, there's some other extenuating circumstance. But don't let it sit, like actually move on it and say, like, we've got to make a change. Because as you know, I mean, it is like a, not a great analogy, but a cancer in the organization, in the sense that like a bad hire starts to impact the rest of the organization too. Then you've got people questioning leadership, right? Because they're hanging on to this obviously bad hire that's not working. When you get into like performance management, all these things, there's no question ever in an organization who the top performers are and who aren't, right? And, we tend to try to find tools and everything, but it's like you just ask people and everyone knows.
They do.
Which means then they know, right, when somebody's not a great hire. So then from a leadership perspective, if it's like, well, we'll just, try to deal with this delicately, and I don't want anyone to think I made a bad decision. I think some of that is what also hangs people up, is like, it's admitting to a failure, right? Like, hey, we did make a bad hire.
Yeah.
But you got to own that, and you got to move. So you need, I think we've gotten to a bit of analysis paralysis, again, to use some classic consulting terms, of just like overthinking hires now too, where, like, I'm going to do 25 back channel references, right? Before I even get them into round one of the process. And it's, it's like,
okay,
I understand the desire, but like, that's not a very efficient process.
And then Yeah, it's true. And the whole thing is like, no matter, I totally agree with both of you. You have to have a very good diligence process, but as much diligence as you do, it's still a bet at the end of the
Yeah.
day. Like, and the goal is to get as much thoughtful information so that you're making a thoughtful bet, but not to, get into analysis paralysis because like, you don't ever really know until
Yeah.
you
You
start
don't.
working together.
Yeah. I also think part of that is, through the analysis that you're getting and the diligence you're getting, I always used to tell people you're basically getting the playbook for how to manage the person. And then you can make a decision as a manager or as a board, in the case of hiring a CEO on, do you want to manage this person basically based on what you know and what you
Right.
learned through the interview process, through the referencing process. And you can then make a decision, do you want to take this on or do you not? And I don't think enough companies do that. I don't think like even Alphabet doesn't do that. Google doesn't do that. And a lot of young companies don't do that. They don't understand the playbook well enough. Because oftentimes if it doesn't work out, I mean, sometimes it's just because the person can't do the job. But a lot of times it's sort of the leaders don't understand where the person's strengths are, where the person's weaknesses are, and manage to that.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of lost opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about that for a second. So how does one get to the strengths and weaknesses of a person? Like, I have my techniques, but I want to know your two techniques in terms of like really digging. Cause I think the difference between, like good diligence and not so good diligence is that you're going deeper, right? And I think a lot of companies, are just kind of on the surface. They're like, okay, that was a good enough answer, but they don't really dig and go like, how did you actually make that decision? Right? How did you get from here to here? Who else was involved? Like, and there's a level of, digging and curiosity that I think one has to have. And I think a lot of folks stop at okay, that was good enough. I don't know. What do you guys think? What's your technique to get deep?
Well, let me just start by saying we have a proprietary set of questions only available to Accel and the Accel portfolio. No, I'm
really? Do tell.
Well,
he's joking.
But I think there's generally, I think, and I'll just use early stage founders. I think there's the perception, right, that somehow there's like some special set of questions that will get to the right answer versus just having a conversation with.
Everybody wants a magic wand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To de-risk it, right? I totally understand that, but then ultimately, if you've done the right work on the front end of it, and it always just seems to me like interviews generally devolve into, okay, I'm in the room with this person. I must somehow figure out that they're not really who they say they are, right? And it's like, well, why are you even doing that? Like this idea that I'm going to somehow trip them up, or I'm going to ask this special question and I'll expose them for the fraud that they are. And
a brain teaser about the manhole and cover. And,
right. Like what is like usually what I am saying is like, in those discussions, you maybe never have hired a CFO before. Does that mean you need to be better than the CFO at the job? Absolutely not, because that's why you're hiring a CFO. So, generally speaking, what you want to be doing is, thinking about the person's work style, even as Jeff was alluding to, right, in the process of referencing and talking to folks, you're sort of building an understanding of who they are and how they operate.
Right.
Because what I could say is you shouldn't be talking to someone at that level about a job if you have not at least done the front end work to say they've done the work. They're technically capable of the job.
Right.
How do they operate, and does that actually fit well within the organization? So
and
to your question on like how do you assess?
What you're going to need for the next year to 5 years.
And that requires transparency and openness, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you take, it's interesting just to use two specific examples, both at the alphabet level. You have the head of HR who we brought in, the CFO who we brought in. And the head of HR I mentioned before, Alphabet never had Google never had the head of HR report to the CEO before. And so that was new. And the person that we brought in, Fiona, came from AstraZeneca, and she had a very strong relationship with her CEO at AstraZeneca. And there were lots of questions that she had about, what will it be like now working, for Sundar. One, because, she had never worked for him, and two, because the role never reported to him. And so we had many conversations around, well, you just have to, both sides, both to Sundar and to Fiona, it's like you just have to have very direct, unfiltered conversations about what concerns you.
Right.
And you have to talk about what worked well in your role reporting to the CEO at AstraZeneca and what you need from a manager, and see if, he's amenable to that.
Right.
And you basically put yourselves into, people can't be afraid to have the hard conversation around like, what can make this not work?
Yeah.
Because I think at the end of the day, if you get to a point where you really want the job and you're a senior person or any person, and you're the CEO or the hiring manager and you want that person to come, there's an element of where you're going to be on your best behavior. And you don't necessarily want to be on your best behavior. You really want to just be unfiltered. And it's like, look, this is kind of what the buttons that will set me off are. And let's have a conversation about it. And we did the same thing on the CFO search because, Anat was stepping into really big shoes from Ruth Porat.
Big role.
And very big role. And her relationship with the CFO at Eli Lilly was great. And, there was some amount of nerves coming into a new environment. Like, what would it be like? And it's like, well, you have to have very direct conversations about what works well for you, what doesn't work well for you. And the same thing with Sundar. It's like, what worked well in your relationship with Ruth, what didn't, and have these very direct conversations with the person you're going to bring in and, see if it goes off the rails or see if there are flags that you need to dig into further. People don't do that, I don't think.
No, they don't. And it's something that I encourage people to do as well, because it's almost like once you've gotten to this point, like, yes, they're technically able. They wouldn't have been a CFO at Eli Lilly, or she wouldn't have been a CHRO at AstraZeneca. Like, she's technically capable, but it's like, can you work together? Like, these are such high stakes roles, and it's almost like you want to simulate working together, because working together isn't really about the technical craft. I mean, sure, that's sort of, you have to do your job, but really working together is solving problems together, going through ups and downs, and how you react to those things, how you are with feedback, how are you able to be honest. And so can you, in the interview, somehow simulate what that dynamic might be like? Is something that I encourage people to do, but you're right, most people don't.
Yeah.
And they don't talk about the hard stuff.
No.
You have to.
Yeah, you have to.
I'd say, public company has constraints, but I think early stage companies, there was always, in certain functions, some sort of working session, right, where they bring you their 30, 60, 90-day plan. And that's great, except, I always advise is just, like, do that with everyone, like, functionally, in terms of, like, sit down and talk about what you're trying to solve for, and say, like, here's what we're up against. Like, don't give them a made-up homework project, right, or something that's just, again, these manhole covers or whatever, some abstract idea that does nothing, right? You don't get to the heart of, okay, this is what's going on. And then, by the way, if I'm coming in from the outside and I start poking at your business, right, start saying, hey, maybe the baby's not as cute as you think it is, what's the reaction? What's the response? How do we work through that to make the business successful, not just sort of manage egos and, there's just a lack of investment in the relationship building, I think, at times.
Yeah.
And this goes back to then the velocity. So I think there's also this sort of mistake of, well, if I do a bunch of activity, right, then it'll feel like I'm moving quickly and making decisions. But
Right.
if I'm basically just doing activity for activity's sake, trying to show that I'm moving fast on a hire, but I'm not actually moving fast on a good hire, I think that's driven by a lot of odd metrics that are out there too on just, they really don't matter. But it's like,
No.
what you want is a high quality person in the role. Like how long that took, just the number of people that you spoke to and all these other things, it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we get wrapped around the axle with a lot of that stuff.
We
Yeah,
do.
some of the best hiring that I've seen, like even like at Greylock, if it was a CEO, that CEO basically did strategy sessions with the team, came up with an assessment of where the company was, where they thought it needed to go, and then would sit down with the board and say, look, this is my view of where things are going to be going. Poke holes into it. Let's either agree or disagree, but I'm hoping we disagree on many things so we can work through it.
Yeah.
The Anat at Alphabet did the same thing, with her trying to understand different aspects of because she didn't come from tech, trying to understand different aspects of the role and what needed to happen, and then trying to form as much as she could a picture of it, and then having that conversation, with Sundar saying, look, like poke holes into it. Let's see where we're off.
Yeah. And isn't that like when I'm guessing this is true for you too, but when I see someone like that, that's willing to come to the table and just be vulnerable and say, hey, poke holes in this. I want to know. I want your feedback. Like, immediately, like that's the difference between someone who's good and someone who's great, because that self-awareness, that it's almost even like humbleness, but they're curious. They're not defensive.
The learning mentality.
Yes.
Yep.
Learning. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's on both sides. That's the candidate and the founder,
Mhm.
CEO, hiring manager, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the best founders are arguably the best recruiters.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Which, I usually disappoint people with, a lot of founders of ours where it's like, well, bad news. You thought you started this really cool company, but you're just a recruiter. That's all you are.
Right. Yeah.
But that's how they build, right? I mean,
half the battle
yeah.
is getting the right people.
Yeah.
Maybe more than
And
half.
I think
I don't
that
know.
you start to short circuit things as well in that context, because, I do believe, and I get it, right? I mean, it's hard. Recruiting's hard. It's not like rocket science. It's not complicated. It just takes an effort, a level of investment in relationship building. And, I think there can be a time where some CEOs and founders are like, well, I'm running the business, right? I don't have time for recruiting. I just need to get that person in the seat and then I don't have to think about it anymore. It's like, well, I mean, you're never not going to be thinking about
Right.
recruiting.
Yeah.
And building
They
the
want
team.
they want it to be over.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember I was pretty early into Greylock. Scott Dietzen, who you probably both know, he was the first CEO at Pure Storage, and they were just going gangbusters, and they knew they needed to hire a CFO that would be a public CFO. And Scott asked me one day, he said, can you introduce me to 4 to 5 CFOs? And I said, well, are you looking to hire somebody? He said, no, I just want to learn. I need to learn what a public CFO does.
Yep.
And we're not ready yet, but I need to be prepared for when I am ready.
Yep.
And, you learn that was great learning for me, because I was so early in my, career at Greylock. And I was like, okay, well, this is a smart CFO a CEO who's trying to learn how to hire well.
Yeah. And that stood out because most of them weren't asking you that way.
I was so new. I mean, we started to push that on our companies. It's like, look,
Right.
if you're going to go hire this person or that person, why don't you meet as many as you can to learn what great looks like?
Yeah.
But like, I give Scott credit because I was so early that he kind of showed me that was a good recipe.
Yeah. No, I mean, the really good founders, the really good CEOs get that this is a big part of their job and
Yeah.
that they have to learn, they have to get good at this. And the ones that don't end up having lots of trouble with their teams for long, long periods of time.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I would argue also lots of problems with the whole company itself.
Yeah. It's interesting. The other thing great CEOs or great hirers do, that doesn't have to be the CEO, is if somebody doesn't work out, they don't blame it on the person not working out. They actually question where they went wrong in their process and what they may have missed.
So true.
And then they get better the next time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I hate it when they're like, oh, it's all that person's fault. They're terrible.
Yeah.
It's like, no,
Yeah.
you're terrible. You made the call. Like, look in the mirror.
Maybe they're not terrible. Maybe they just missed a few things.
Yeah. I'm being dramatic for the podcast. We need to add some drama to the, controversy, edginess to the show.
Right.
Okay.
Well, we got to talk about AI then. No.
We're gonna, but I want to talk one thing, because I will say, even though I grew from recruiting and then into HR, recruiting is in my bones and it's, I think I'm very good at it. I think you two are very good at it, but, most CEOs and founders really struggle to find good recruiting talent for their organization. And, I want to know what you guys say and think, but, CEOs will often ask me, like, how can I tell if, this recruiter is good or not? And I always say, when's the last time they told you not to hire someone? And they're like, never. And I'm like, there's your answer. Yeah. They're not very good.
Yeah.
And I don't know what your answer is, but let me hear it.
I'm waiting for
how do you know?
Why are there bad recruiters?
No, but how do you know when you get, because we know there's tons of great ones, there's tons of okay ones, there's tons of terrible ones. But how do you know when you have a great recruiter?
Well, and funny enough, I think it's a really simple equation of like the same way you have a great anything else, right? Like you've got a method and process in terms of figuring that out. For whatever reason, recruiting, because apparently, you could just throw a job rec into a room full of 100 blind monkeys and they'll come up with a candidate because,
right.
I mean, it's recruiting. How hard can it be?
Right.
Like if I'm going to try to hire a recruiter, I'll just go on LinkedIn and find somebody who has recruiter in their title because like, doesn't matter. It's low risk. Anyways, I think there's just a complete lack of respect for the industry and generally speaking, driven by the zero barriers to entry.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot out there, but then like most companies, founders, CEOs are not doing themselves any favors by actually being diligent about that hire too.
Right.
Right. So, like you can figure out if someone's a good recruiter for in a variety of ways, just in terms of what have they done. Right. And to your point, like, are they a business partner? Are they business centric? Are they just responding to metrics, right? Requests. And then, ultimately too, the reason most recruiting teams churn all the time is because recruiting becomes the excuse for the hiring manager, right?
Yep.
Like if it's not getting done, most hiring managers are like, oh, great, I got a recruiting team that I can blame when this isn't going well because I'm putting zero time and effort into it. I'm just throwing job recs over the wall and hoping something comes back and then complaining about it.
Right.
Right. So, I don't know if that answers the question as to how. I mean, and then when people lock onto a good recruiter, they don't let go. Right. But
like
that takes a bit. So, anyway.
Yeah.
That could go on ranting, but go ahead, Jeff.
That's okay. It's funny because as Pete knows, both my kids are in recruiting now, and
which I love, by the way.
I'm extra sensitive to like trying to see how they're getting trained and are they getting trained, to be great recruiters.
Are they?
I hope so. No, they are. I think the there was one very prominent venture capitalist that was like in venture capital during the heyday. And I said this earlier, I learned recruiting through getting beaten up by great venture capitalists. And it was not pleasant at the time, but that's how I learned.
Yeah.
And I think as venture capital has changed and the art of venture capital has changed and the art of being a great board member has changed, so has the art of great recruiting.
Yeah.
And I do think what I've seen is there's so much salesy recruiting.
Yeah.
And it's not about that. And unfortunately, recruiters react to what their clients want and what their clients' demands are. And so much of it is flow of candidates. And there's not enough on like stepping back and saying, like, let's really make sure we're getting the right candidates in.
Yeah.
I just don't see it. I don't see enough of that.
No, me neither. And that's why I always ask that question. It's like, when have they told you not to hire someone? Because it's just like, they're pushing anybody that you have an inkling of you like, they're pushing that person. Oh yeah. Okay. Let's get them.
Yeah.
They're not being, they're not helping to advise or influence them to make a really exceptional decision. They're just trying to get the process done and get somebody in the seat. And I think that, that's part of the incentive programs around recruiting are also broken, because it really is like, how fast can you do it? How fast can we get someone in the seat? And you're looking at the numbers of phone screens that they did, the numbers of interviews, how long they took, time to fill, all those things. And it's like, who gives a fuck if they're terrible? Like you could have like the best numbers on the planet, but if you're hiring all people who are bad for the company and who don't scale, like that's not good. Like so I never, people always ask me like, how do you judge your team's performance? I'm like, not through that. I judge I judge it by the quality of hire. And I also judge it by hiring managers saying to me, if you take this person away from me, I'll never forgive you. I can't do my job without this person. They're more part of my team than your team. I was like, then I have a winner, Yeah. And because they're helping them hire. And also, you two know this, none of these people know how to hire. And so you have to have people that are going to teach them how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
great.
I think that some folks on here are going to learn some stuff from this. So that's really helpful. And I just have to say that you two have been so important to me in my career, because you two are often the first people I call when I'm thinking about something, when I'm struggling with something, when I'm considering something. You two are at the top of my list because you're so good, and you've always been there for me. And so I just want to thank you two for that, because you are gems, and I want to know you and have you in my life for decades more. If you'll have me.
Well, thank you
for saying that.
Yeah.
I feel the same. Well, I don't want to speak for
that. Is a
Steve.
career confession, then maybe.
That is a career confession. And I will just say, like, you two have given me great advice over the years, and you've helped me think through some difficult decisions. So thank you.
Well, right back at you.
And
thank you.
Thank you for doing what you do, because I know not enough people thank us. So thank you.
Well, thank you for doing this podcast to talk about it, whether it's just a therapy session or it's helpful to other people, either way.
Yeah. Well, therapy's good.
I've never done a podcast before. This is great.
This is your first podcast?
It is.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I'm glad I was your first.
Thanks for listening to TruthWorks.